First episode begins with Melissa putting on makeup. Melissa tells Hazel a happy birthday. Max is surprised by the number of presents Hazel has. Ben finishes his run and returns home. He picks up the mail before going inside. Hazel receives a card. She asks her mom what Chilliwack is. Melissa claims she doesn't know who the card is from. It also includes a creepy drawing. When Hazel asks more questions, Melissa tries to explain everything away. Melissa hides the card in a safe with others. Ben checks on her. Melissa goes to work, where she says hello to Stuart. She questions why Ivy Campbell was so upset. Stuart suggests it's the same old drama. He mentions the mother from Colorado whose daughter was murdered last year. The mother is now saying she won't go on. Ivy comes in and tells Melissa that her name is Kathy Weaver. Melissa agrees to try to calm her down. She works on Kathy's makeup and tries to convince her to go through with the show. Melissa admits she was supposed to talk her into it, but she doesn't have any skin in the game. Kathy says her daughter was killed and the police have nothing. She can't think of another way to get people to care about her. Her husband thinks it makes them look desperate. Melissa suggests any mother would be desperate. Melissa receives a message from her daughter asking about her crazy uncle and Chilliwack. Melissa gets upset and tells Kathy that the person who killed her daughter needs to pay for it. Ivy pulls Melissa away and worries they'll lose her. Kathy comes out and says she's ready to do this. When Melissa leaves, she goes to the store to pick up birthday candles. She remembers something when she sees a roll of tape. Melissa celebrates Hazel's birthday with the family that night. She tells Ben he can go for a run and she'll clean up. When Melissa is alone, she looks at the website for the Oregon Department of Corrections and finds out how to contact an inmate. She goes outside to call only for the new neighbor, Renee, to interrupt. Melissa tells the inmate to stay out of her life and to stop writing letters. She threatens to make his life miserable if he doesn't stop. At work, Melissa speaks to Stuart, who says Kathy had the audience in tears. Melissa learns that Dr. Greg wants to speak to her. When she visits him in his office, Greg introduces her to John the lawyer. Ivy comes in a bit later. Dr. Greg asks Ivy what she knows about the happy face killer. Melissa learns that the killer called the show earlier today and said he had information about a murder. He would only speak to Dr. Greg and Melissa. Dr. Greg questions why he would speak to her. Melissa has to confess that the killer is her father. Keith Hunter Jesperson calls in and asks for Melissa. Keith wants to hear from her. He claims this is about getting the truth out to the media. Keith claims he hid a murder from the police, although Melissa doesn't believe him. Keith says he'll only tell it to Melissa in person before hanging up. Ivy tries to convince Melissa to go there tomorrow morning. Melissa reveals she visited him twice. She visited when she was 15 and he got arrested, and when she was pregnant. Neither time helped. Her husband Ben knows, but he told the kids that her dad is dead. Ivy suggests they could get some grieving family an answer. Melissa goes home and looks through Keith's letters and pictures. In a flashback, Melissa rushes to see her father when he gets home from work. One night, they watch America's Most Wanted together. In the present, Ben finds Melissa looking through the pictures. He believes Keith is lying to her. Melissa worries Keith will never leave them alone unless she does this. Ben doesn't think she wants him to stop because she still loves him. Ivy takes Melissa to the prison to see her father. She asks Keith to sign the release form. Keith questions whether his attorney should look at it first. He asks Melissa if she remembers Chilliwack. He reminds her that they went swimming together. Ivy asks about the 9th victim and asks Keith to sign the release. Melissa believes this is a lie to get her there. Keith worries Melissa will leave and stay away for another 15 years if he tells her the woman's name. The guard tells Keith to sign the form or return to his cell. Keith signs it and draws a smiley face on it. At one point, Melissa calls Keith Dad. Keith says Melissa is still his little girl digging around his pockets for treasure. Melissa insists she's not there for him. Keith questions why Melissa asks like she's God's when she benefited from every killing he did. He says Melissa got presents every time a woman took their last breath. He brought her big presents he knew her mom couldn't afford. Keith claims he bought Melissa a trampoline after the ninth victim. It was the last gift he gave her. Melissa gets upset and asks to go to the bathroom. A guard comes in and tries to find out whether she's sick like her father. Keith decides to end the interview. Ivy keeps asking him questions. Keith tells her to ask Missy because she knows. Ivy joins Melissa at the pub later. She tries to get Melissa to remember what happened previously. Ivy says Keith said Missy knows. Melissa claims not to know anything. Ivy asks about the trampoline. Melissa says she was 15 at the time. Melissa asks Ivy if she gets depressed thinking about the terrible things that have happened. Melissa notices Death Game on her computer. Ivy explains he liked to choke them but not to kill them. Melissa says she tried to avoid the details. She decides to leave. She remembers Keith telling her about pulling off the perfect murder. In the present, Melissa goes home and watches a news report about her dad. She remembers her father taking her to the house in the video. Melissa even stayed in a residence belonging to one of the victims. She notices blood on a ceiling fan above her. Keith interrupts and asks what she's doing. He tells her it's spaghetti sauce. Next, Melissa tells Ivy they need to speak to her mother. They visit her home, only to find that she's not home. Melissa is allowed to go into the basement. Ivy sees a picture of Melissa with Brendan, whose face has been scratched out. Ivy's mom returns home and knows she visited her father because Shane told her. Her mother doesn't know what happened to that trampoline. She tells Ivy how she does her part. Melissa claims her own children are on their own. Her mom thinks Keith is still dangerous, but Melissa says he's pathetic and desperate. In private, Melissa's mother, June, tells her daughter she got a call from a man who claimed to know what she was wearing. The man described her nightgown to a T. June believes Keith had something to do with that. He called and said he sent a friend by. Melissa believes her mother is just being paranoid. June says Keith wants her to know she's only alive because he wants her to be. She's convinced he would hurt anyone in the right circumstances. Ivy interrupts to show Melissa that the trampoline is still outside. They find the name of the store, Longhorn Sporting Goods, which is in Denton, Texas. Ivy and Melissa question Keith about being in Texas. Keith admits he was in Texas and he stopped at a bar to have a burger. He talks about how he met the bartender who was hitchhiking. Keith explains how the woman got into his vehicle and relaxed once she knew he had daughters. Keith claims the bartender had a good voice and wanted to be a star. She sang and played guitar. He says they had sex, but he's never raped a woman in his life. He admits he strangled them. Keith eventually begins talking about strangling a woman. He explains the smell of the woman when she died. When he started to move her, she started coughing, so he hit her over the head. He hit her with a dog wrench. Keith says he dumped her under some bridge, brought a trampoline, and drove straight to Melissa. He claims they're the same, even though Melissa is good at pretending she's someone else. Keith knows Melissa deserves a better dad. Melissa remembers her dad having a guitar pick. At the motel, Melissa tells Ivy that she had a guitar. She calls Ben and asks him to get into her safe. He looks for the yellow guitar pick. Once Ben finds it, he tells Melissa that it says Whiskey River on it. Melissa believes that's the bar in Texas. Hazel overhears them talking on the phone and learns about Melissa's dad being the happy face killer. Ivy learns about Heather Richmond, who was killed on February 18, 1995. Ivy says the murder is not involved because Heather's boyfriend, Elijah Carter, was convicted of her murder. He remains on death row. Hazel researches online and tries to find out more about Keith.